Thank you all for joining. Today, we're going to discuss how to ask for a promotion as a software engineer in 2026. Before we get into it, I do want to introduce myself. My name is Justin Otero. I'm a director of engineering at Navan, as well as a career coach here at Value Driven Careers, which is what brought you to the call. This is today's agenda. This is a lightning lesson. It's going to be fast. I'm going to talk quickly and I'm going to do my best to keep us on track. And we're going to go through all of this stuff. So let's start with the challenges for asking for a raise or a promotion. Let me know. Have you experienced one of these, two of these? Maybe you've experienced all of these. You can just write a number in the chat, 1, 2, 3. I know personally, I felt anxious before asking for a raise or a promotion. I've heard people say that they don't want to feel ungrateful asking for more money. Sometimes timing is off or it's too soon, too late. One of the worst things is, you talk to your manager and they're supportive. They say, you're doing great. You're on the path. And then you leave that conversation and you're not really sure, well, okay, guess I'm going in the right direction, but how close am I? Where is it that I need to improve? And that's something we want to make sure that you get that clarity and direction. All of these challenges you can and will face when you're unprepared, when you don't know what to expect in the conversation. And that's what we're here to equip you for. Let's talk about some myths and truths about raises and promotions. You'll often hear people say, do your research of the market, kind of your role, other companies, and present it to your manager. Know what the market pays. Well, truth is, you do need to advocate for yourself, of course, but the grass is always going to be greener. There's always going to be someone who gets paid more. And what's more important is that you don't just try to compare yourself to another company or even other team members, right? You want to keep the conversation focused on your current company and you. You'll often hear just jump between companies frequently. Truth is, your pay will stay current with the market, but you will start to plateau. That's plateau both in pay as well as like technical expertise. It's also easy to get caught in layoffs when you're frequently switching, and hiring managers, they want to see growth. When we review a resume or a LinkedIn profile and we see that someone went from mid-level to senior engineer, we see growth at a company. And if you can do it at your company, it's likely you'll do it at our company. So that's like something we actually do look for. We don't look for just job switching. Another myth is people think promotions and raises are based on how long you've been at a company. Truth is, some get raises after 3 to 6 months of joining a company, and others can go years without that recognition. Companies tend to water the most promising seed, right? They are making an investment in you when they give you a raise or a promotion. Next myth, meets expectation is enough. Meets expectations is the bare minimum. This is what you were hired to do. And really, it allows you to keep your job. It prevents you from going on a performance improvement plan. You want to become a bar raiser, not just a maintainer. And you want to be the engineer that is going to grow the next set of engineers. One of the last myths here is your manager knows what you want and knows you deserve a raise. Realistically, your manager has so many other things on their mind. You need to help them help you. What I mean by that is your manager is thinking about timelines, business value, cross-functional partners. They need to hire engineers. They need to onboard them. You have other team members who are also wanting raises and promotions, and your manager is thinking the exact same things, but for their own career. So you need to do really what you can to help them get you to where you want to go. Look, I can do this all day on myths and truths, but I do want to get to the more exciting parts of today's lightning lesson. So, what do you actually need? There are 3 things that you need to be promotion ready. It doesn't matter if you're a junior engineer, senior, L5, L6, whatever your company wants to call it, you're going to need a combination of these 3 things. That's visibility, performance, and a track record. We're going to break down each one of these. So, visibility is broken up into 2 parts: recognition and awareness of direction. Recognition is, does your manager, your team, does your skip, do they see your contributions, or are you out of sight, out of mind? Do they see you as someone who's making the team, the system better? And are you doing things with excellence? Awareness of direction is when you say you're going to do something and you actually do it, right? People respect that. And so if at the beginning of the year, you make it aware to your manager that, hey, these are the areas I want to grow, and by Q3 or Q2, this is what I want to have accomplished, that is way more meaningful than you going, and looking retroactively like, hey, this is what I did, right? You want to cast that vision and you want to execute against that. It'll also allow for your manager to hold you accountable and give you feedback along the way, which is going to increase your chances of going to where you want to go. Performance. This is really important. Everyone wants you to increase velocity, but that doesn't mean just doing things fast. You want to move with clarity. You need to align with others and build the right thing. So many times engineers, don't get clarity from, requirements. They don't understand other parts of the system that they could be leveraging. You may build something today, and then the next iteration that you need to do, you have to do a massive refactor. But if you had done the work ahead of time and gotten that clarity of maybe where we're going, you can ensure that you will move faster in the future, right? So that's what it means to just actually move fast with clarity. You also will need to multiply your efforts. That's through delegation. That's enabling others to be more efficient. You want to create leverage through artifacts. That's through tech designs, documentation, run books, really the things that will live way beyond your tenure that others can refer back to. You also need to go beyond the minimum. Your technical skills, that is expected. Those are the table stakes. You were hired because you have those. And quite frankly, everyone on your team is also very technical. They're all skilled. And so you do need to find ways to go beyond. AI, I don't believe AI is going to replace anyone, but AI is a great equalizer, right? It's great at the technical perspective, the approaches. It is pretty good at writing code. And so you need to make sure you go beyond what AI is already able to do. And that's going to allow you to increase your influence and your impact. The last major thing that you need is a track record. That's 2 parts: consistency and proof of impact. Consistency is the number 1 thing that prevents raises and promotions. Doing something once isn't enough. Doing something twice, cool, you're going in the right direction. Once you do something 3 times, a pattern begins to emerge, right? So if you're looking at a matrix and you're like, oh, I've done that thing at L5, well, you want to make sure you're doing that thing consistently, as well as you want to make sure that you're able to track your consistency. And then the last is proof of impact. Can you communicate and capture the value that you are making for the team, the company, and the customer? Assume that 50% of what you do is actually important, and only 10% of that is visible. What I mean by that is it's very common that you're already doing great work, but others don't see it. or you maybe devalue it. An example is maybe you're talking with your manager and you're like, I reduced build times by 10%. That sounds pretty good, but that's not as interesting as the why, right? Like, why did you have to reduce the build times, right? Why is 10% important? What was the impact across the org? What was the challenge there, right? Like, when you get into the why behind what you did, that's where you start to surface that impact, right? It's saving, multiple engineers time, across, 300 engineers, right? Saving 5 minutes on average, and there's 200 builds in a day on this repo, right? Like, that is the impact. So these are the three things: visibility, performance, and track record. And I do want to mention your track record. It's not just a verbal track record. It is an actual artifact that you need to create. And that artifact goes with you. When you get a new manager, and that's like one of the biggest problems, is people are worried that, oh, I have a new manager, I'm gonna have to restart. No, your track record is gonna speak for itself. When you go to interview at another company and they ask, what were some of the major projects you did? What was the impact that you had? Again, you refer back to that track record. So these three things, as I mentioned, doesn't matter what level you're at, you will need a combination of all of these in order to be promotion ready. Let's get into how to ask. These are the 5 steps to asking. The first one is you do want to give your manager a heads up. This will allow them to mentally prepare. This puts them into that mindset of, okay, what's James doing? Is he ready? What are some of the projects he's been working on, right? Like, it just gets them into that zone. Number 2 is you want to just be clear on what's more important, money or title. They are not mutually exclusive. However, knowing which one you're optimizing for, it just helps the conversation. Number 3, you're going to introduce a topic. 4, you're going to confirm where you stand. And then 5, you get them invested and you take ownership. We're going to dive into each of these, but we're going to do so in 2 formats with 2 separate scripts. One is you've been at the company for a while. And number 2 is you've just joined a company, or you have a new manager, or you land on a new team. We're going to go through when you've been at the company for a while. This is the talk track. The first one, very simple. It's, in our next one-on-one, I would like to discuss my career growth with you. Very straightforward. Like I said, you're giving them heads up, and you do this a week to a few days before you have that meeting scheduled. Number 2, like I said, this is something you're going to do internally, but dig deep and know what you're optimizing for. Number 3, this is the start of the conversation, and the format of this is really important. Like, lock in on this because the details are really key. So when you introduce the topic and you've been there for a while, it goes something like this. Thanks for meeting with me. We're expressing gratitude immediately. I really want to have this conversation as my compensation and career growth are important to me. What you're saying, like I said, you express gratitude, and then you say, this is important. Your compensation and career growth, you're setting those expectations immediately that this isn't a one-time conversation. Like, this is something that you care about. Next, you go into confirming where you stand. And you're going to mention 2 to 3 things in this, but it goes like this. Based on the feedback I've received, my experience and impact and contributions, now's the time to start this conversation. You are building a foundation. You're not listing off your track record. You're not going through, all your accolades, but you are setting the groundwork, right? You're setting the stage. And number 5, you want to get them invested and you want to take ownership. This goes something like this. I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can for the team and the company, and I'm curious what we can do together to get me to my desired outcome, to get me to my next, level, raise, staff level, whatever it is, right? And this is really important as, one, you're taking ownership immediately. You're saying you want to make sure you're doing your part, and not just your part for you, but your part for the team and the company, right? You're starting with a servant mindset. And then you are curious what you can do together, right? You're bringing them in. And once you bring them into that problem, they're also an engineer. We get into problem solving mode. We start thinking, okay, this is just a simple problem. How do we solve this? And they start going through that exercise of, okay, this is where he wants to go. This is where he's at. How do we make it happen? Now, I do want to share some timing for when you have this conversation. One, use discernment, right? Like, I think, if you just had a bunch of layoffs at your company, maybe not the right time. However, I am a strong believer that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. So you should have this conversation, and we are at the end of the year. I am going through and reviewing a ton of people. Companies are going through review cycles now, as well as they're going through review cycles in the new year. That's why we've timed this, because we want you to be equipped for it. Okay, let's look at the second talk track. And that's gonna be for when you have a new team, new manager. Basically, you're just new. Either they're new or you're new. There are some minute differences, but we're gonna go through each of these. First being giving them a heads up. It goes like this. In our next one-on-one, I would like to work with you on how best I can grow here at the company. Again, you're doing that a week or a few days before. And what you've said there is you want to work with them and you are trying to invest in the company. How best can you grow here, right? So very clear, straightforward. Number 2, like I said, consider that internally. And I think why internally is some people earlier in their career, title increases are going to be really important. Later in your career, compensation, responsibility, those types of things are more important. So again, just you want to make sure you're optimizing for the right thing and you know what's important to you. Cool. Introducing the topic when you have a new team, new manager. Thanks for meeting with me. I really wanted to have this conversation as my compensation and career growth are very important to me. Same thing as before, you are letting them know this isn't a one-time thing. Number 4, confirm where you stand. Based on my goals, my commitment, and contributions, I want to get on the right track. Again, you are letting them know that you have goals, that you're committed, and that you know that you have to contribute, right? You have to do your part and you want to get on the right track, right? That's, again, your foundation, setting the stage. And then the last part, getting them invested and taking ownership. I know I have to do my part for the company, and I'm curious how we can partner to align on my trajectory. Again, you took ownership immediately. You said, I know I have to do my part for the company. You're aligning with the company. And then you are bringing them into the problem again by saying, we're going to partner and align on my trajectory. That means no matter what, that you are already on a trajectory and you want to work with them to do so in the most efficient and beneficial way. So Let's talk timing. When you have a new manager, it's very common that they start hearing everyone worried about raises, promotions. They start like, hey, did my manager tell you? Well, you need to give them a little bit of space. And even when you join a company, so the timing for this is going to be 30 to 90 days, right? No sooner than 30 days and no later than 90 days. And when you have this conversation, like I said, you are setting context, you are casting vision for yourself, and your manager, they want to promote you. It is actually really important that they are growing engineers, and you don't get a raise or a promotion unless you're excelling, unless you're doing really well. And that's a good sign for your manager. Why? Because you need less management. So start that conversation at the 30 to 90 day mark when you get a new manager or you are new to a team and or a company. Okay. This is how you ask, but you also need to be equipped on how to get clarity. I mentioned earlier, you will have a conversation with your manager. They'll seem supportive. Everything's great. But then you leave and you don't really know what the timeline looks like or what you actually have to do. So we're going to dive into what questions you need to get answered. There are two categories of questions. First being expectations and the next being timeline. These are the three questions you're going to want to dive into with your manager. You want to know, are you currently meeting the expectations? Really, like, where is the bar, right? And what I mean by where is the bar, ask who is it in the org or on the team that is at the level or operating the way you need to, right? That way you can find someone that you can talk to and really like learn from and model after, right? I like to believe that if you focus on strengths, why did someone else get promoted, right? That's a learning opportunity. So just know where the bar is. And then you want to know where they want you to grow. It is expected for them to have some feedback. And so explicitly asking that question is very helpful. Timeline. These are, I think, the thing that we all really want to know. It's like, when? Tell me when, tell me the exact steps. So you ask, how long, should you expect? Is this 1 quarter, 2 quarters, more? It's sometimes a question that is hard to ask, but it's a reasonable question and you should be asking it. As well as you ask, how do we track and what's the frequency in which we can check in to make sure? If you go and have this conversation and then the next one-on-one, you don't talk about it, you don't check in, it's not even mentioned a raise or a promotion, that's a problem, right? So again, you want to know the frequency and you want to know what you're tracking, how to check in. Lastly, if they say it's more than 2 quarters, the best thing to do is ask, how do we accelerate it? Your manager can forge a path for you. And again, this is problem solving mode. When you ask that question, they start thinking in the back of their head, okay, what's on the roadmap? What things are coming up that have the right scope, have the right complexity? They're thinking about, okay, there's maybe areas that there's technical debt. You can accelerate this stuff. And so you should ask, how can we accelerate it? If it's 1 quarter, it's probably 1 quarter, right? You're probably not going to get a little faster than that. But if it's more than 2 quarters, yes, you should ask, how do we accelerate it? Last question that I didn't put on here is in your one-on-one, in this conversation, as well as other conversations, ask your manager, what is it that I can do to help you succeed? This is a super powerful question, and it's something that your manager isn't being asked, right? And when you do that, not only did you already take ownership of all the other stuff and you're talking about growth for you, etc., but you're taking a moment to express, that you have capacity to even think about them. This is really good because the answers that you get here will tell you a lot. It will be, hey, no, this stuff is great. Cool, you have the right information. Or they'll say, you know what? This thing, right? And that's new data. That's the thing that they care about and run after it. So that's a bonus question. Okay. Now, what to expect from your manager? Because most managers, they're going to say the same things, and there's a lot of things that they won't say. Really think about how this stuff applies to you and where you are currently in your position. Now, these categories, everything the categories I shared earlier, the three, which is, your visibility, performance, and track record, all of this stuff tracks back to it. Again, those are the three things you need. So visibility, performance, and track record, and this is what you can expect in the conversation from your manager. First being, they'll often say you need to be more consistent. They'll often mention you need bigger projects. That's bigger in scope, that's more complexity. And so you need to identify what those are, right? And how to get them onto your plate. They'll mention increasing velocity, or really you need more impact here at the company. They'll also mention scaling, you're not scaling. This is a common pitfall for talented engineers. They have that mindset, if you want something done right, do it yourself. But as you grow in your career, you will need to multiply your efforts. So you need to scale. They might mention craft or attention to detail. And then often they call out the matrix, or they'll reference it, right? We like to lean on the matrix if your company has it. And this is both a good thing and kind of an annoying thing. But when you look at the matrix, you're not just looking at your current role and where you land. You need to track against the next level. So look at that L6 column, and you want to make sure you're consistent and you're hitting those things, time and time again, right? So those are the things that they're going to say. Now, the things that they won't say, you need to be prepared and you need to be looking out for, literally reading between the lines. They often won't call out visibility and recognition. When your manager wants to promote you, it's actually pretty straightforward once they believe it. If they believe it, then they go to their skip or they go to the committee and they make the case. But if your skip doesn't believe it, if your peers also don't believe it, right? They're gonna ask your peers, how's Chandra doing? And if there isn't good feedback, if they don't believe that you're tracking against that next level, that's a problem. And so you do want that visibility and recognition, and they don't often tell you that immediately. Your manager also won't explicitly say, raise the bar. What they will say is, you're doing well, keep doing what you're doing. But keep doing what you're doing, is that because you're maintaining the bar or because you're exceeding it, right? So know when you need to raise the bar. They also may not tell you that you and your manager don't have a good relationship. I talk to a lot of engineers, and that's a pain point. They will frequently leave a company because they don't have a good relationship with their manager. And if your manager is the main gatekeeper in your next level, your raise, your promotion, then you need to work on that. As well as you want to make sure you have alignment with others, right? Align what your goals are with the company. And then the last thing that your manager won't say, because we don't say it because these conversations are always hard, right? Giving direct feedback to you is a difficult thing. And especially when, like I said, a manager has many things to think about, but they won't tell you that you have to be persistent. I mentioned it earlier. If you have this conversation today and then next week or next month, it's not talked about again, you dropped the ball. You need to be persistent and you need to keep that pressure on your manager. Okay. All of this stuff you need to take ownership of, and you need to demonstrate to your manager that you are executing on all of this. That's how you will make that case. That's how you will show that you are ready for more. Let's recap really quick. We discussed what drives the promotion. We went through some myths, some truths. We went through the 3 key components that you're going to need at every single level, which is visibility, performance, and a track record. We went into how to have that conversation. You're prepared to now go have that conversation, mapping out the areas of growth and tracking that progress. We don't particularly have a ton of time left. This is a lightning lesson. It's meant to be short and quick and to the point. But I am confident that you can do this. And when you do it and you come correctly and you go through the format I shared, I know you will apply this and I know you will be successful. Let's talk next steps. We've really been diving into how to ask for a raise or a promotion, but asking is only part of the equation. You still need to be promotable. You'll need the visibility, you'll need the performance, and you'll need the track record, because that's how you're going to show growth. So let's take a look at something really quick. This is your career. Everything looks good, pretty normal. It is all things considered linear. You get a raise, you get a promotion, maybe you get a new job. Like I said, all looks normal. But we've just been talking about a point in time, an event on this career journey. But in between these events, that is where the growth actually is. This is where you're overcoming challenges, you're getting unblocked, you're receiving feedback, you're developing that track record. But beyond these events, this is what growth actually looks like, right? You begin excelling in all of these areas. You develop the skills to operate at a higher level. You'll develop a quality network up, down, and all around. You'll have allies and advocates. Your momentum will start to shape the team, the company, the roadmap, and then you'll experience the career outcomes that you want. So before we get into Q&A, I want to share the Software Engineer Growth Program. This is how you gain that visibility, increase your performance, and develop the track record. Like, if you want to start the year off right, scan the QR code. You can check out the syllabus, really dive deeper and get all the details about the program. I'm going to leave this up. I really want to get to Q&A because that's where things will get really interesting. So, Abigail, let's do it. What's the first question?